Hello and welcome to Answer Everywhere. I wanted to look today at Lemmy, which is a Fediverse link aggregator, a site that's like Reddit or Hacker News or Lobsters, or there's a bunch of these sorts of sites where the idea is that you post a link and you discuss it. For in the context of Reddit, it's also more or less just like a standard web forum, but a little bit nicer format than the old school web forums, bulletin boards. I'm going into this with a particular perspective, and compared to other episodes of the show where I've just sort of been exploring, this time I'm looking to really evaluate Lemmy to see if it's something that a code base that I think I can work with. I've been thinking for a while about what it would take to try to take some of the frustrations people have with the social media experience in general. Reddit recently is something that people are feeling frustrated over. Twitter, not too long ago, the same sort of thing. And people have been trying to create alternatives to these experiences for a long time, really almost as soon as the internet was commercialized. And so the Fediverse and things like Lemmy and Mastodon are really relatively recent entrants in what is a long history of trying to create decentralized or peer-to-peer experiences that fit the same sort of niche that the corporate social media sites fill. And since these sorts of things have a long history, you sort of see that a lot of the same patterns and issues crop up over and over again. And I think that one of the reasons that so far none of these attempts has really succeeded is that nobody has really figured out from an organizational viewpoint or maybe a psychological viewpoint or perhaps an economic viewpoint how the things are going to work if they ever become popular. And relatedly, nobody's really figured out how to make the value proposition convincing enough to cause people to jump ship. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is how you might make that work. What are the constraints on the problem? And can you get any sort of traction by trying to think about it in the term, essentially in the terms I just described, rather than trying to think about it as something that you can fix by hacking together an alternative that's more peer to peer. And so that's kind of the view I have in mind. One thing I would like to do is I would like to have some sort of network of social media sites where there's enough funding for them to kind of exist in perpetuity, and they're in some sense democratically controlled. So part of the issue that things like Federation is trying to solve is that when you have something that's trying to be a public forum and it's owned by, let's say, a publicly traded company, then that the difference in incentives that a publicly traded company has is often different from the incentives that the users of that site have. And that creates a sort of disconnect. But I think that these sites are ultimately simple enough that the marginal cost of serving any one request is close to zero. But there are largely predictable high infrastructure costs, and there are largely predictable costs to just keep code up to date and keep security fixes moving, those sorts of things. And so there should be a way to try to set things up so that something like Lemmy or something like Mastodon or some group of these can continue to exist in perpetuity, perhaps using something like an endowment, the way that universities have these perpetual endowments that are designed to keep the finances of the organization afloat perpetually into the future. So that's sort of one question I have. And when I'm looking at Lemmy, one of the main thing I'm asking is like, do I think this code base is reasonable enough for those purposes? Is there enough here to sort of take it and invest, my time and energy into it? So that's what I'm looking at. All right, so let's jump in. So Lemmy is, at least the backend is written in Rust. And the front end, I think, is written in some sort of TypeScript. In fact, actually, before we really get too close in the back end, let's take a quick look at the LemmyNet GitHub thingamajig. So we have Activity Pub Federation, Rust. I guess this is the library for handling the federation. We have the UI, which is TypeScript. Oh, hey, Pietro. Pietro is telling me that he is also known as Farinap5 on the Answer Everywhere Discord channel, which, by the way, you should join. And speaking of Discord, I noticed that Lemmy has somewhere a Matrix chat. Matrix is another kind of decentralized chat that I think is worth looking at, but I haven't done yet. Okay, and so they've got a JavaScript client, which I'm guessing is probably used in the UI. I'm not sure. A federated bulletin board. I'm not sure how that differs from Lemmy, and then some stuff for deploying Lemmy with Ansible. And I think that's it, right? Oh, no. These are just the top ones, the popular ones. And we've got things like a crawler. Where did the crawler go? Stats crawler, translations. Just want to make sure I have a sense of all the things here. Okay. And then Join Lemmy, I think, is their site, like the website for the project, as opposed to a Lemmy instance. Okay, so let's take a look at what I believe is the backend. And we'll pop the UI out into their own tab. And I'm going to guess everything is in source, right? Unless everything's in scripts. We have API tests and readmes and migrations. Docker, I'm going to guess I can ignore. Let's see what's in crates. Hello, developer. How it goes? So crates, we actually have a bunch of stuff, including API common, a CRUD API, which might be different from the regular API, and some database schemas, as well as routes and utilities. I'm not sure where to start. Maybe I guess I should see what's in these different API folders. We have, I guess this looks like these are just models of we have comments, communities, comment report. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe that's for reporting a comment in the sense of like letting people know when a comment is inappropriate. We have a local user. I'm guessing local here means local to the instance, because you can also follow remote users via federation, and a post, which is probably essentially a glorified comment, and private messages, and whatever a site is. And then what do we have in API common? API common, we have some comment stuff, context stuff, lib, person, post, private message. Okay, so there's a fair amount here. And I'm not sure how these all differ. I might just pick one and take a look at it, API pub. And in pub, we have activities API, fetcher, HTTP, collections. Community featured, community outbox. Okay, so these are maybe collections of posts. And what is an API? List posts, list comments, mod. Let's look at mod. Is this for moderation? This is a short file. Perform apub. Apub, I'm going to guess with high probability is activity pub. And returns a default listing type depending if the query is for front page or community. Okay. I'm going to make lots of keyboard errors because on my main machine, I switched a bunch of modifier keys around, and they're not switched around on my VM. Okay. Let's look in source. Let's go back to the root folder and look in source. And source has very little here, which probably means that all the real code is in the other folders I was looking at. So API routes is not so, oops, probably not so interesting. But I'm going to look at it because it will tell me where things go. Code migrations, I'll ignore lib in Maine and root span builders for spanning trees, schedule tasks, and I guess telemetry is for making statistics and whatnot. There's just two sources open. Okay, that's good. Here's API routes. This is Rust. I'm not sure what this syntax is because I don't know Rust very well, but I'm going to guess that this is kind of importing these methods maybe from Lemmy API common, sort of comment prefix or something. We have this API v3 prefix. Scope mod log, I guess, is some moderation log. Search resolve object, maybe taking an identifier and getting an object back. Then community, more community. How are these different? Web resource community card post. So I'm guessing maybe post is the HTTP verb. I'm not sure. But okay, so I guess this is stuff we can post, and this is stuff we can either get or put. So we can get community, edit community. Okay, so this is just standard like database backed web app. It looks like, except with some weird Rust syntax. Decorating or figuring what's going on. Handle post to post separately to add. Handle post to /post separately to add the post rate limiter. Okay, so somehow we can add a rate limiter by posting to post. Handle post to comment separately to add comment rate limiter. Oh, okay, maybe post is both. Post is both the verb, the HTTP verb, and also like a Reddit style post. Okay, so oh, that's enough to get a sense for me of what's up in that file. So here's lib. How big is this? So 207 lines. So it seems like we have lots of little files. And if anyone knows Rust, let me know, because I'll probably at some point struggle with some of the syntax. We have things like init logging in lib. That's where we are, right? So what else is in lib? When do I need to import lib? So we can start Lemmy server. And this is presumably just some Rust-based web service framework, essentially. Placing the main function in librs allows other crates to import it and embed Lemmy. You might want that. There's a rate limiter here, which is, I guess, probably pretty good. I think I'm used to rate limiting being something that you do kind of outside of the app, maybe in something like a sidecar. I guess if to simplify things, it's nice to have one built in. Let's see, rate limit cell. I don't know if that's something that they have implemented, their own rate limit functionality, or if they're using a library. And then we've got a federation config here. Is this still start the server? Okay. And they're going to call app new and do a bunch of stuff. That's really it. We can log and we can start the server. And the server is just really going to do kind of boilerplate setup. There's some spawn stuff. Schedules various cleanup tasks for the database. So I guess we're going to run periodic tasks. using just using like threading. We've got this rate limiter stuff. And so let me take a look at federation, I guess. Create this federation config, but what do we do with it? We're going to pass it in to, we're going to wrap it. I don't know what wrap is. Maybe wrap is a Rust thing that kind of like wraps the pointer. Because we're, after this, after we call app new, I'm guessing that nothing else is going to do anything with that, with whatever the app should essentially own it. I guess, I don't know. If you know Rust, let me know. All right. And then in Maine is very simple. I'm going to return a result of, I guess, nothing or Lemmy error. And we're going to init logging, and then we're going to start Lemmy server. And then we've got this thing that looks like JSON. Big source. I guess here is some JSON config. I don't know if this just means like this is the default. I guess we're going to listen on port 8080, whatever pictures is. I guess pictures. And then some file system stuff. Okay. Or is this a test? All right. Okay. So that's all relatively straightforward. What is root span builders? Default root span builder. Luke Mathwalker. Handle error. On request end. Take a look at this. Over this middleware to collect telemetry data from applications. There's root span builder for collecting telemetry. Got some info span, HTTP request. And it's going to record the method, the method, the scheme, etc. I think that is what it's doing. And then what does it do with it? It's going to look at the outcome and possibly return some stuff. What's this? On request start. Users say they know Rust mostly because my friends like to not to talk about it. But the syntax and idea pleases me. Yeah. It's definitely easy to read. Rust also is something that's been in the word. They had some drama recently that I still feel like I don't understand. I mean, I read about it and it just feels like I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure I understand. And honestly, I probably would have spent more time learning Rust by now. Except that when I had spent time, like mostly lurking in Rust communities, it felt a bit like high drama. And that turned me off a little bit. But from a technical perspective, I like Rust a lot. All right, so here's schedule task. This is just going to be some periodic tasks. I guess I'm just curious to see what some of these are. So cleanup tasks. I guess Postgres connection. Maybe we have Postgres is like the favorite database. This looks like a test. Right? So it's going to say expect could not establish connection. Maybe that's just the default. And then we're going to, on startup, going to run whatever active accounts is, update hot ranks, update banned when expired, clear old activities. Okay, and so all this stuff is running as part of the main binary. So hot ranks, I'm guessing like on Reddit, you have some sorting of the posts, and one of them is called hot. And so hot is some sort of, I assume, weighted uh, list of what has recent activity, what's gotten upvotes, what's gotten a lot of upvotes recently, what has a lot of upvotes but not a lot of downvotes, and those sorts of things. Um, and I haven't really given any thought to how Reddit computes those, but it seems like maybe what update hot ranks is going to do is compute them in this same binary that's running the web server, but it's going to do it using periodic task. And then clear old activities, update banned when expired. Something about banning and expiring. Update user counts every hour. Update hot ranks every 5 minutes. So in a more distributed system, some of this would theoretically be part of a different, maybe something that just operates on the database or something. But that's an optimization. And here's update hot ranks. So developer says they're a JavaScript. Awesome. Do you know TypeScript? Out of curiosity. Okay, so we're gonna get something, whatever diesel is. I'm sure that's something we can look up. Yeah, I keep using the wrong keys. Okay. Safe extensible ORM. So this is some object relational query language, I guess. And so what that basically means is that it's just going to look in the database. It's like a convenience layer for translating database objects into software, into Rust visible objects, and vice versa. So where were we? So Diesel is going to update whatever. So the post aggregates. I don't know what aggregates means in this context, but we're gonna, I guess, maybe get posts, comments, and community updates. And we're going to look in the last week. We're going to filter if is published recently enough, if I guess the comments are recently enough, etc. And then, this is only if last week only is true. Otherwise, we're going to update hot ranks for all of history. And then we're going to update by calling post. And we're going to run this hot rank EQ post aggregate score, post aggregates published. I'm not sure what this actually does. So I'm guessing this is equal. Hot rank active. And then the function, okay, so the function hot rank is, I think, really doing the work. Okay, then we're going to execute. But this seems, I'm not sure why you wouldn't just compute them ahead of time. For example, if your post fails and you have to retry, is it going to recompute the rank every time? I'm not sure. Seems like you would run your post logic outside of the rank computation logic. And then similarly for comment update. I'm not sure. I'll ignore this and move on. I'll ignore telemetry. So there's really not a lot there so far. Let's look in the API, and you wouldn't really expect there to be a lot there because even for Reddit and for Twitter, it's mostly just comments, right? So comments go in the database, and you have users, and the users can subscribe to comments, and a lot of that stuff is really straightforward in the small, and it's really only once you start growing a lot where you have your Lemmy server is spans like 1,000 machines in different data centers, and you have a ton of users that you need to quickly get things to. So that sort of stuff starts getting complicated. But at least in the small, this is about the level of complexity I think that I was expecting, unless I'm missing a bunch of stuff, unless I'm missing a bunch of complexity that's in the API stuff. So let's take a look in the API. I'm going to guess that API, just without any other words, is the place to be. The site private message post report post. I'll take a look at I guess a few of these. I'll open site as well. Okay. So community has things like ban and block, okay, and hide and mod and transfer and add mod. So community is really a list of basically some mods. Whatever follow is, I guess you can follow. I guess it's the support for following the community and banning people, and whatever transfer is. So let's look at transfer. Distinguish. What does distinguish mean? Distinguish comment. We got this function perform. You can check community ban is mod or admin. Hit the comment. The comment report. You can create a comment report. We've just got this function perform. So I guess perform is just the thing that's going to like implement the handler. See if we can find a documentation for the Lemmy API. I don't see anything how to find a comment report. Is there a search bar? Reports content for rule violation. Reports content so that mods and admins can review it. So I think that where's the method? Where's the method? Okay, so report I think is for reporting, basically diming on your fellow man. So Peter's saying they would think it uses a graph database to handle so many data that's connected to each other, messages, comments, etc., just like Twitter did. Interesting question. You do eventually want to have a graph database, but maybe only for like queries. So it might be fastest to store it in a traditional SQL database and then load everything like daily, let's say, into a graph database to do fast graph queries. I don't know enough about graph database performance to know whether it's better to just use a graph database straight out. But that's actually a good question. Let's see if we can. I do see Postgres, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the only thing here. Maybe let's check where is the did I close the Lemmy docs? It does seem to be in there. also see if they have like what's a graph database? I don't think there's one. J something or other. The popular Java graph database, Neo4j. I'm gonna guess there's nothing. I don't think. Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting point. But I'm not too surprised. This is probably how I would have built it, at least initially, and then added a graph database if necessary. Okay, so we could just update comments and that sort of thing. This is, I still don't know what distinguish means. Let's see if we can find distinguish. Adding mod admin distinguish. Maybe it's like a chip. This, let people know you're a mod. It's like Flare. Then we have this add mod thing. I'm just going to put something in the database, right? And then mods, at some point there will be permission checking. I don't think I've seen that yet, but mods will be able to have access to other API, access to API endpoints that non-mods will not have access to. The graph is useful just to store IDs of the real data stored in other places, buckets. Is that a Pietro? Are you making a point or asking a question? I don't. If that's a question, then I'm not sure. Certainly, the graph is useful for keeping track of relations. So you could do graph queries on standard relational databases, and the reason that you typically want a graph database instead is that the graph databases are much faster at essentially running graph algorithms on the data. At least that's my understanding. And if that's not correct, and you or anyone else knows otherwise, please let me know. But I think that for most other things, the SQL is nicer to work with. And I don't know how something like Neo4j, for example, what the actual underlying data structure is, but I believe a lot of graph databases are in their hearts triple stores. And that may not be the best storage in general if you're not mostly doing graph queries. But again, I don't know. This is something that I am interested in. I just haven't. I just don't. I don't know yet. Okay, so what is transfers? We don't do anything for federation here. It's stated the next time the community gets fetched. Transfer community. Okay, so this is like moving a community. I don't know, maybe one place to another. Local user view from JWT. So we've got some JavaScript web token. Getting a user view, I guess, looking up the authenticate, taking the JWT, which I guess is off, and getting whatever a local user view is. Maybe that's like the local representation of a federated user, perhaps. Then we're going to get the community mods from whatever data is. And make sure the transfer is either the top community mod or an admin. All right, so you need some permissions, which is just done, I guess, here in a if check. I guess it's it would be a little bit nicer to have like a method that can only be called. Essentially, it seems like instead of having like an if statement here, it seems like this is maybe something you would want your authorization library to handle for you automatically to test whether a person's authorized to transfer. We might have to redo the community moderator table. Delete all the mods. I'm guessing this is all under the hood in transactions, but I'm not sure. I guess I don't really know enough about ORM. So we do an insert here, do like a delete somewhere, delete for community. I don't know. It seems like you would want all the ordering and deletions and stuff to happen in the same transaction. So you can, if it fails partway through, you can roll back. And maybe that does happen under the hood with ORM, but I don't know. I think that that would be maybe too hard for ORM to know all the things you want in the same. Probably be a bulk operation. Re-add the mods in the new order. So we're mostly transferring mods. Where do we get the data? And I think I have to go in a second. And then following should mostly be a matter of community local. Following should be like mostly a matter of like adding a community to some per user list, right? Community follower, we're going to say follow, context pool, community follower. Discussion languages. So what I'm getting from this code base is, and again, I don't really understand Rust that much, but it seems like the it's relatively, it seems very lightweight. It seems kind of nice to read, and there's not a lot of, you're reading it, you don't really see algorithms that are doing work. The real work is being done by taking the request, kind of shuffling it off to the database. And then there's a little bit of work uh, here or there, but it's not like when we say looked at, compilers or the Bazel code base where we were staring at like an algorithm that we had to try to reason about to see what it was doing. Here, it's just a matter of, I think, once you understand the Rust syntax and what what the function names mean, it's really clear what's going on. Is my guess. So I could be wrong. This is API. Let me take at least a quick look at at the TypeScript UI. I don't really expect anything. So first of all, I don't have much time left, but I just want to get a quick feel for it. Server indexes, I guess. Shared client asset, CSS and icons. App thing. Okay, and here we have, this looks like, I guess is a default post and port. Got a themes folder, I guess for themes. A default robots.txt code, I guess, as opposed to a file. We've got service workers, themes, server get. So it appears to be some routing. Get site data first. This bypasses errors so that the client can hit the error on its own in order to remove the jot on the browser. Necessary for wrong jots. That's a little bit odd. I'm not sure what that means. By the way, who's issuing the jots is one thing I don't think I understand yet. Forwarded headers. This looks like relatively low level for for a TypeScript app. Normal for TypeScript? Like set headers and stuff, individual headers. I guess maybe you have to. Some manifest. Fetch icon, create. And here's the actual like index, I guess, right? All right, so that was a really quick look. I have a couple of questions still. One is I don't know where the authentication and authorization code is. I'd like to see that. I think it's going to take too long for me to try to drill into that because I have to go in about 2 minutes. And another is I'd like to see how I'd like to have a clearer idea of how some of the federation stuff happens. So when I subscribe to a user, I guess, who's on another instance, one of the questions I have is like, who fetches the content from that other instance? And so maybe that's in this federation Rust thing. So if the client, so if like, let's say that, I'm on the mobile app. If my mobile app is fetching it, then let's say a malicious Lemmy instance can track me as I'm moving around the city to city or whatever. If it's my instance, however, then only really the instance that I directly connect to has access to my AP. Or how to quickly check that sort of thing. We have activity pub federation, whatever actix in Axum is fetched. Collection ID, mod, object ID, web fingerprinting. Make an identifier of the form name at example.com and returns an object. A web finger protocol to an activity. Okay, so I don't have solutions to these questions, but I think I'll dig a little bit more into what they're up to and see what I see. That's all for me. Thanks for watching.